I'd now like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the town of Mint Hill, North Carolina for September 8th, 2022. We do have a quorum present. I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Dalton if he would lead us in their invocation, please.
Let us pray, please. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this evening you have given us. Dear Lord, we just ask you to be with us as we conduct the town's business. Please give us the wisdom, dear Lord, that we make the decisions that's best for our town and for the citizens of it. Just be with us as we go throughout the rest of this evening. For it's in your precious name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. We'll now ask that everybody in the room stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda item number 3, additions, deletions, or arrangement of agenda items.
So moved.
Have none. Item number 4, approval of the minutes of the August 11th, 2022 called and regular meeting and the minutes of the August 23, 2022 called meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 5 is the consent agenda. A, authorize the town manager to execute agreement with NCDOT for bridge inspections. B, approve speed limit reduction request for East Side Estate neighborhood. C, approve speed limit reduction request for Kendleton Meadows neighborhood. D, adopt amended planning board fee schedule. E, adopt changes to the personnel policy. F, accept August treasurer's report and financials. G, accept the August tax collector's report. H, authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute a contract for the EB-6051 sidewalk project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 6, I'm now going to open the public hearing on the 2022 land use plan. And Ian, if you have the podium, sir, if you'd like to come, introduce yourself, please. Give us your address for the record, and then you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. My name's Ian Anderson. I'm a landscape architect with American Company. We had the honor of being the consultant team that developed the comprehensive plan update. My address is 2609 Lawton Bluff Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for having us here tonight. It's great to be back. We are very pleased to present the conclusion of our comprehensive plan update for you tonight, and looking forward to discussing it in more detail. John, do I have control up here? Because it's not.
All right, well, I'll do it.
Respond. There we go. So we've been at this for a while. As you may recall, we got going back in February of 2021. We approached this with a 3-phase project. Phase 1 was discovery. That lasted between February and June of 2021. Then there was a plan development phase followed by the plan documentation, which we're wrapping up now. Throughout those phases, we utilized a public engagement process that was as collaborative and inclusive as we could develop, with the intent to get as much public opinion and vet these ideas and recommendations throughout the process to make sure that this was a product of the community. That included PAC meetings. So PAC is our project advisory committee. We had an outstanding group of very active citizens that helped us shepherd this plan along. We conducted stakeholder interviews where we met with folks representing the residential community, real estate, business, industrial, commercial, just regular citizens, and asked them what this comp plan should do to make the town better and what it needs to address. And then we also had public forums in a variety of formats. We got started right in the heart of the pandemic and had to do some virtual meetings, but those were pretty well attended and we got some good feedback. And as soon as we could, we started to pivot to in-person meetings as the health department allowed us to. So we would have those here and do open house events where we would put up the findings of the most recent phase and have the public come through and kind of walk them through those exhibits and boards. And what the most important key is to get feedback. We wanted to record the thoughts, comments, and good ideas that we heard from the community, from the PAC, from online surveys, again, to just keep guiding this plan forward and making it a product of the community. So again, in plan development, we had a number of PAC meetings. That was probably the bulk of our PAC meetings and public forums as the plan was starting to take shape. And then more recently this year, we have met with you all a couple times to show you where we are with the plan. We have been drilling into some small area plans, a couple areas that we're excited to show you here tonight. And that brings us to today, to our public hearing today. Next slide, please, John. So throughout that process, we were utilizing a lot of different meetings and formats, but we also, as soon as we got going on the project, got a project website online, and we used a really great group called Public Forum, or publicinput.com, who developed some very cutting edge, community engagement software that allows us to stream meetings to the website, host surveys, crunch the data as we're getting it, and start to see those results. And on that slide, we just have the kind of the summation of those, where that website saw almost 3,000 views. We had over 415 participants, and a participant would be somebody that commented in some way, shape, or form, either through a survey or through one of our whiteboards or the Post-it, notes that we had on there, and got a lot of responses, a lot of good comments, and there was an ability to subscribe to that, and we got almost 200 subscribers. So this was, considering the size of the town, this was a really good engagement with the community. These are good numbers. Next slide, John. So what came out of that was, we started hearing, some reoccurring themes. Number one was the small town feel and that sense of community. That was probably the most common thing we heard, and that is something that was the community adamantly wanted to maintain, is to hold on to that small town feel. Equally, that we heard a lot of is the preference for things to do. And specifically the entertainment and, shopping, dining. We've heard a lot that, folks are leaving Mint Hill to go to Matthews or Charlotte to go, out on weekends, and that they'd like to keep that here and local and have some kind of walkable mixed use entertainment activity centers. So that was another important thing that we looked at as we moved forward with the land use plan. There was acknowledgement that Mint Hill is not the same as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. Demographics are changing. We've heard more about, wanting to have a town that can support all ages, from new families to aging in place, and having a range of housing options to support that and keep people in Mint Hill and not moving out. Big part of the charm of Mint Hill was the green character and all of the open space. It is a more rural, larger estate community, heavily wooded lots and green corridors along the roadways, and that's another very important characteristic that folks wanted to hang on to. And that, kind of knowing that growth is coming in, infrastructure and how infrastructure is planned and developed can guide that, this residential and commercial development. So that was another important aspect that we wanted to focus on. So these were the 5 community preferences that sort of guided the plan along the way and got us to the plan where we are now, with probably the greatest change from the previous plan is that we have expanded and zeroed in a little bit more on the residential uses. The current plan just applies one residential use to most of the area of the town, where we know, via conditional permitting and as rezonings have developed, that's not exactly what is on the ground today. So we looked at what those densities are now and what the uses are around them, and how we could start to better categorize those residential uses. So generally, we've added a bit of a finer grain to that to try and adapt to what is on the ground today. But then also looking at our activity centers. So the downtown district, lawyers in 485 and 218. There's a number of commercial nodes developed around major arterial roadways that we think could start to serve as those mixed-use activity centers that the community wants, for those entertainment, shopping, and dining options. So that got us to the plan where we are today. And so just as important as identifying what those land uses are is you want to create a plan that has measurable and actions that you can take forth, implementable goals. And so there's a whole toolbox, of strategies that we can use to implement the land use plan. Number one is development standards. That would be the next step, is looking at the zoning, the UDO, and how that can support this new land use plan. Where the public investments are going to be in terms of things like infrastructure, parks, roads, and how is that going to support the plan? What are the ranges of programs that the community or that the town could implement that would support some of these land uses? And then what kind of follow-up studies do we need? Because, this was a very, higher level view of the comprehensive plan. And so as you go along, you find there, small area plans, corridors, different areas that warrant further study. So we identified what some of those areas are as well. So that kind of creates a menu of strategies, and we put these into matrices and have been working with staff over the last few months over, how can we select and prioritize those strategies? So there's a few key criteria that we look at is, alignment. How does this strategy align with the overall town goals? What is the feasibility of it? Is it, a feasible plan in terms of cost or impact, community impact, and obviously impact? How much are these different strategies going to influence the plan? So these were the criteria that we measured those with, and got us to our recommendation. So we have prepared a list of recommendations organized by, Parks and Rec, infrastructure, commercial uses. This is just a sample of those. And some of these recommendations have all four of those toolboxes. Some maybe only have two or three, and that's okay. But each one of these are designed to, prioritize and identify those goals and then give us a roadmap for implementation so that we have something to build to in the short, mid, and long-term range. So this is an example of the strategy prioritization where we list those strategies kind of on the left. And then we identify them, a brief description, who's going to be the champion, the lead behind that strategy, are there estimated costs, where are the funding sources, and what are the next steps? And so once the plan is adopted, this is where we'll be heading next, is, we're going to need resources, in some cases funding, in some cases partnerships with other allied agencies. There's going to be teams that will be assembled. Sometimes it's just going to be town staff. Other times it might involve, special consultants, or again, working with agencies like Met County or CATS. And then, organize each project and in terms of prioritization and getting those moving. So part of this and of the land use plan was looking at a couple key sub areas that the town had identified, midway through the process, as we heard a lot about downtown and what it could be. And so we worked closely with our team, with town staff, with the project advisory committee to start looking at what that could be. And I will say first and foremost, this is one development scenario that could happen, and there's reasons we like this one, but this could take a number of shapes depending on how this develops. But we wanted to float a few of the key kind of ideas behind this in terms of the framework. So, and number one is, if you click again, John, for me, you have the bones of a downtown have already been started here, and you can tell that this is not done yet. And we wanted to take what has been built and extend that. So Townview Drive, as we know, it just stubs off there, but it could extend, towards Lawyers Road and really build out that street. And what we want to do is get as much activity on that street as possible and push it towards Lawyers, but also consider pushing it towards the historic village. And what that would do is, create a mixed-use Main Street type scenario that would link the historic village, that kind of honors the past with all of this new downtown development. So you kind of have this, the timeline there with Town Hall right in the center of it. Another key ingredient or framework that we think is access into the downtown. You have a signalized intersection now. We're not going to get any more between here and Lawyers Road, but along Lawyers, NCDOT wants around an 800-foot offset between intersections, which is just inside our downtown area. So that's why we have that measurement there, is roughly in that areas where we could get a signalized intersection. So we'd actually have two full movement intersections into the downtown, one on 51, one on Lawyers, which we think would be advantageous. So you put those in, and then, John, if you click the next slide, I mentioned the Historic Village Park. We think that's a great civic open space anchor for the downtown. That's existing and now, and we can connect to it. But we've also looked at this bit of open space where we have a little bit of some retention going on now. It's a small pond down low. And we actually think that presents an opportunity to develop a town center park around that. And that park is intended to be multifunctional in that the grade, by building up the downtown grade around it and having the park down low, particularly that stormwater storage, is we can actually have that park be designed to flood. And that would take the burden of having to bury, subterranean stormwater storage under these buildings, which is typically what happens in these urban environments. It's a cost developers don't really like to bear. They'd rather just put it in a pond in the back of the development. We don't have that kind of luxury of that real estate. It's, every acre is important here. So the idea is that park would absorb all of that stormwater and slowly release it. So it creates kind of a downtown venue, but also has an infrastructure lift behind it as well. Then we know, in terms of development, visibility is huge for retailers. So that frontage along 51 and Lawyers Road is going to be very hot, and that would probably be some of the first to go. So we think in some way, shape, or form, there's going to be commercial uses or office that want to abut those roadways. So as that development comes in, that leaves this remainder of the area, the interior, where there's a lot of different ways that could take shape, a lot of ways the block configuration could work, and this is one of them. I do want to note that we have included provisions. Obviously, the existing police station would need to be relocated. We have located that towards the rear of the development. And there is potential to have a CMS library facility down here. So we have located that as well, which starts to build out a civic function of the downtown with the town hall, the police, the library. Now you have kind of some of those destination-based civic uses down here, which adds to the activity and vibrancy. So that was a downtown plan. We also looked at the 485 and 218 interchange. And specifically, and this was driven a bit by the Goose Creek sewer extension. That's going to create a lot of developable land that can now tie into that sewer. And so somewhat of those boundaries was defined by that. But particularly, we were looking along the corridor of 218 from the east side of 485 and frankly going all the way back to 51 and what that could look like. And we think that area of, Allen Black Brief Road and 218 Fairview, that intersection is pretty optimal in terms of adjacency to the highway. It's got good visibility there, good access. So we looked at, again, trying to develop these entertainment nodes. So what could go in there? We're looking at, some commercial uses, food and beverage. There's a little bit of some office there towards the back against the highway. We think that's got some developable merit as well. And then a couple hotels that we're actually showing there as well, again, near the highway, because we do think those could be supported by some of these future projects coming down the pipe. So that gives you, again, another kind of mixed-use activity node that we've looked at as well. So those were that's the long and the short of it. We believe this plan has been vetted well through our PAC, through the community, and we're excited to get that adopted with you guys and take the next steps, and particularly looking closer at some of these sub-area plans. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
We'll start with Commissioner Long. We're going to go from that end to the other end one time, and then Commissioner Holton.
No, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalton.
We talked a lot about the downtown area and the 218. How about on 51 going the other two directions?
So from downtown, you're talking
Yes.
about? Yeah, we did. We didn't get as close into that. We kind of defined a boundary around that area. In terms of that corridor, I think, that we've heard a lot about, wanting to avoid the drive-in style, drive-through retail franchise type development. So we are trying to concentrate as much of those uses into that downtown district area and not let that run rampant along that corridor. But we have not gone to the degree of that. But we have, one of our recommended studies was a 51 corridor. That is probably one of the higher ranked studies we think that would need to happen, given the NCDOT plans down the road for expansion, the need to make that multimodal and have a pedestrian focus, and to address the adjacent land uses along there. So that is another area of study that we've recommended that warrants a closer look.
Okay, that's all I got for right now.
Commissioner Henderson?
Nothing, sir.
Just to tie back into that, you mentioned the road widening and everything on Highway 51. Do you have a time frame that you suggest on the Highway 51 study, considering the fact that it's probably not going to be widened or improved in the next 15 years?
Yeah, I don't know that that's, we've heard a lot from the community that they want to know what's going to happen to it. So I think,
do we. So do we.
yeah, I think that's the impetus, is not to, to catch up with NCDOT so much as to get consensus in the town around what that corridor should be and get in front of NCDOT so that you guys are leading that discussion, not them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is probably more a John question here. There's a lot of people I think that are here concerned about the land use plan. Can you kind of just give an explanation as to what this land use plan is, what the goal of it is, what it accomplishes?
So the best way to think about this is, once this is adopted, this becomes a guide to your future decisions. So once this is adopted, when a rezoning application comes before you next year, 2 years, 3 years from now, you will use this document to base your decision on. And that's probably the easiest way to explain it.
Okay. But just for clarification, this does not rezone property.
No. Yeah, it does not rezone, not at all.
Yeah, if I may, one of the ways we describe that, this is a land use vision. The tools to achieve the vision are the zoning, the UDO. Those are going to have to be, updated to support this in some areas. So to John's point, yeah, that's the mechanisms. This does not define density, FAR. It's just a land use vision, and the next step will be going into the zoning, the UDO, and updating those as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Long?
I had one question for John. And how often does Mint Hill and similar towns do something like this?
A land use plan?
Yes, sir.
Usually a 10-year is a good number to use, like a 10-year, you probably want to look at it. Some might, after 5 years, they'll look at it to see if they're progressing, see if they need to make some refinements to the plan. But 10 years is generally, I think, what you would find is probably the more common time frame as far as redoing it or updating it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give the public an opportunity. All right, we're going to give the public an opportunity to speak at this public hearing. I'm going to ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you to come to the microphone, and I'm going to ask you to state your address, even though I've got your address on the card. Me not read good sometimes, and I'll make sure I got it right. And we want to make sure our minutes are correct first. So I'm just going to pull names based on the way they were handed to me, and please don't laugh if I butcher your name. So is it Michael Kafka? Is that correct?
Yes.
Sir, if you'll come to the podium, give us your name and your address, then you have the floor for 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll read quickly. I don't know if I'll get through this in 2 minutes, but I'll do my best. And I recognize what was said about this meeting tonight. This future land use plan is not talking about rezoning or particular development, but I am here to speak. Well, first of all, my name is Michael Kafka. My address is 8435 Raventop Drive at Summerwood in Mint Hill here. Been a resident for 7 years. Concerned about what I'm hearing is a potential industrial warehouse development.
Okay,
that would
let
go up.
me interrupt you first
Yep.
of all, okay? I knew that was going to come up.
Uh-huh.
What you're hearing has not been presented to the town. We have no idea whether that will ever be presented to the town. So to comment on that is not applicable at this situation.
Okay,
Later on, if they file paperwork with the town and they decide to try to move forward with that project, we will have another public hearing for that purpose. The
Okay.
purpose of tonight's public hearing is to comment on the general overall use of our land use plan.
okay, well then I'll just keep it, and thank you very much, and I realize we probably are almost out of time here, so
No, you're fine. I didn't take you 2 minutes. You're still starting.
thank you. I guess I would
I'm
just.
not in that big of a hurry.
Thank you, and I mean, that's obviously very important information. So what I would like to, and everything that was spoken about by the gentleman earlier is very important information, and I support wholeheartedly. My concern is turning areas that are currently zoned as residential into potentially general industrial when they're very close to a development. I think about a mile away from our development. And so I realize I can't get specific here as to something that hasn't been proposed yet, but I would just respectfully ask the commissioners and the mayor to look very closely and please consider the impacts on the community when rezoning property that's currently zoned as residential and so close to already existing residential to general industrial and the potential impacts that could have. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Next one is Matt Sebastiano. Is that anywhere close?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Thank you, sir. Hi, my name is Matt Sebastiano. I live at 8615 Raventop Drive in the Summerwood development. I'm here in front of you to discuss the potential rezoning of the parcel at the corner of Blair Road and from residential to industrial, which is on the plan here. Just wanted to say that before moving to Summerwood, I did a lot of research. We weren't sure if it was going to be Fort Mill, South Carolina, or Mint Hill, North Carolina from Ballantyne. We found that the zoning in South Carolina wasn't very well planned, and we could end up pretty much with anything next to our home. When we researched the area in Mint Hill to ensure that the area around my home was not industrial or commercial, we were very happy with what we saw, residential zoning. Had we found something else, we would not have even considered a move here, just like we did with Fort Mill. 1 year after my home being finished, I'm so happy to be a resident of Mint Hill. I love the town, I love the community, but I'm very disappointed to be standing here in front of you this evening opposing an unexpected and potential change of a residential parcel near my home. And that's a 480 home community. I'm also here in front of you trying to protect not only our community, but my $800,000 investment. The traffic, the noise, and the pollution that an industrial rezoning and site could have is adverse. And let's not forget how dangerous the area at 485 and 51 is in regards to traffic and accidents. Adding a large flow of 18-wheeler trucks or whatever it may be that comes with that would make it even more dangerous. And I've also done some research and drove by areas that have large industrial projects. And some common themes were trailers lined up sitting on the highway off-ramp, idling and parked. And I even saw it today at Albemarle Road and 485. As
Okay,
well,
thank
on the
you.
roadway that leads up.
Thank you. Let me interrupt you. Your time's up.
Okay.
I also want to make another point clear to everybody in this room. I understand there's a lot of you here from Summerwood community and that you have grave concerns about something you've heard in your neighborhood or from somebody outside of town government. As far as the property you just mentioned, the town has not been notified at this point in time or been requested to rezone anything in that area.
Can I ask
It
you a
is-
question then about
Yes,
that?
you can.
Why was I given a letter and asked to go to a public
Did
meeting
it come
at the
from
church
did it
to
come-
discuss that
Did it come from the
information?
town, sir?
I don't know who it came
Well, it
from.
did not come from the town, sir, because we
Okay.
put up signs when there's rezoning.
Okay.
And we notify all the neighbors within the area when there's a rezoning request.
Mm-hmm.
This has not happened. This is something that we've, and I appreciate all you, any of you that sent me an email, I appreciate that. I listened to every one of, any of you in the room that I've talked to on the telephone, I've talked to you on the telephone. I appreciate that you have input like that. Tonight is not the time for that conversation because there is no rezoning in front of this board at this point in time.
What I'm asking you to
That
do.
could never, that may never happen, and I served on the planning board
Mm-hmm.
for many years before I was mayor, okay? Many times we had developers talk to neighborhoods. They found out from the neighborhoods that the neighborhoods weren't fond of the idea of what they were going to build, and they never brought it to the town. So I'm not going to spend time tonight talking about a rezoning that may never happen.
But the plan that you've put in front of us potentially takes the recommendation for that land from residential to something
We
other
already
than
told
that.
you tonight, sir, nothing on that plan rezones any property in
Okay, shouldn't
town.
rezone it, but it gives you a guide that it potentially could.
And-
So I guess to sum it up, what I'm asking you to do, okay, is to consider that area of 51 and remove it from this plan and leave it as it stands.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker is Tony Burrows. He's not present? Next speaker is Bradley Caffey.
Good evening. My name is Bradley Caffey. I am from 8602 Raven Top in the Summerwood community right here in Mint Hill. Mayor and commissioners, thank you for hearing me out. I represent many like myself. You're going to hear a lot of repeated themes tonight, I'm sure. But as a resident of Mint Hill, I believe that the voting on this land use plan is an opportunity, and specifically to decide, make a statement about who we are and who we are not as a town. To declare in no uncertain terms that this town is about its people and the people who live here and where they live, and not just simply dollars and cents that may or may not be brought into the community by recommendations in this plan. Charlotte is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. There will be no shortage of businesses and industries that want to come into Mint Hill and drool all over the land that we have here, this beautiful community that we have. And a recommendation that to some of us looks like lopping off pieces without making consideration for the making this a great place to live, in my opinion, sacrifices the soul of Mint Hill. We live here, you live here, and to miss that could set a dangerous precedent for future decisions and potentially create a slippery slope into losing the unique, family-friendly culture that we enjoy. So I ask here tonight, as we examine this land use plan and some of the recommendations it makes and how it affects residents of Mint Hill, I ask humbly and with urgency that this board of public servants rise up and make that statement about what this town is supposed to be and what it is not going to be, and send a message to industry that we're not interested. We are not some random corner of the Charlotte metro area that can be portioned off to the highest bidder. We all here are the people of Mint Hill. We live here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Stephen Schlackman. Did I get that right?
You did, sir.
Good.
Thanks for having the hearing tonight. My name is Stephen Schlackman. I live at 8535 Raventop. I have a few specific concerns about the land use plan that's on the screen behind us, specifically the items that are in gray, and then larger concerns as well. So as you can see along 51 there, you have this is projected as light industrial. This is directly across from a high school, right? This does not allow for any sort of transition from a residential area to an industrial area. There's no reason that this area should be light industrial as a part of this land use plan. Furthermore, I don't understand how, as a Board of Commissioners, you can vote on behalf of the public to accept this without understanding what the future zoning will actually be. The consulting team that's here tonight has said that that is a future step of the process. I do not understand how we as a community can say this is what our land use plan should be without understanding what each of these individual areas actually represent. That legend does not line up with any zoning requirements. It's just a guide that this team has put in front of you. I don't understand how we can approve this and not understand how each of those areas will go into those particular zoning requirements. I would ask you to think about a couple of things. As you look at this land use plan, I think that the downtown area and the items that this team has spent a lot of time on are incredibly valuable, and I would encourage the development of that. But it seems as though that lower corner, as this team decided, needs a future study. That is not something that we want to study. That should be residential. That is all areas that are hundreds of houses today, and trying to converge commercial and residential in that area simply does not make sense. Not now, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now, not 20 years from now, right? I appreciate the time to talk about this, and I would really appreciate the consideration of why we have a high school and residential areas with what is clearly a very big gray block there that is what this says light industrial. There's no reason for that. So I would ask you, I think it's fine if you want to approve this, but you need to make a recommendation to this team that we go back and make that residential and not light industrial. There's no reason for that land to be anything other than residential at this point. There's a new community of homes that you all have already approved behind the Summerwood community as well. So thinking about how those areas potentially being light industrial would be devastating to that area, right? I understand that nothing gets rezoned, but as the gentleman over here stated, this is a guide for you as to what this could be in the future. I don't want that to be commercial or industrial, and I think a lot of people in the community and are in this room would agree with that. So I don't want it to be officially rezoned. I don't want it to be planned to rezone, and I don't want you all to even consider rezoning that. And I would like to have that removed from the land use plan and remain as residential, please.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is David Kirkpatrick.
Yes, sir. David Kilpatrick, 8426 Raventop in Summerwood. Mr. Mayor and Town Commissioners, based on your instructions to us, we're not here to talk about a specific site. But I do want to point out to you that the specific site that is shown on the future land use plan as light industrial is being pre-marketed already by a developer that you say has not been presented before this town. I've got a one-page prepared speech, but I'm going to sum it all down to this. A typical term for the smaller towns surrounding a large city is bedroom community because of their predominant residential nature. In spite of its recent significant growth, Mint Hill has managed to maintain its small town charm. All we are requesting of you, as our town leaders, is that you demonstrate the wisdom of Waxhaw and Weddington, not the foolishness of Matthews and Indian Trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy Kleber.
My name's Tammy Cleaver. I'm from 8510 Raven Top Drive. We've got a whole cohort here from Summerwood. Just appreciate you taking the time to listen to our concerns. And I really can't say anything better than what was already said about the land use plan, specifically that corridor, Blair Road and Connell, where we all live. But just to ask you to think if you were living in one of those communities right there, how you would feel. We moved in, it's a major investment. We've got nice homes, and the values will most likely be decreased if industrial in the future down the road is allowed to be built right next to a community of close to 500 homes. So really, that's my plea to you, is just to put yourself in our shoes, and how would you feel if this was thrust upon you? And I just ask you to just, as people have already said, that section of the land use plan, just to go back and reconsider and not approve that piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Dark, something close? Ryan from Connell Road? Ryan Davis. Yeah, I can't read. I told you that. I already apologize in advance. If that's you, sir, it's your turn.
I am Ryan Davis. I live at 10601 Connell Road. I apologize for being slightly underdressed here this evening. And I also live within the community of not Summerwood, but Connell Road, which is directly linked. I will reserve the majority of my comments for the next public hearing you mentioned. I will keep this short and sweet, but I identify with everything that these people are saying. And we happen to be living at the parcel that directly is adjacent to that parcel that everyone has mentioned. It's literally in my backyard. I've lived in Mint Hill my entire life. I want to stay a Mint Hiller. And this potential parcel rezoning could make us move. And I'll reserve the rest of my comments until the next public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is it Kat?
I think you got that right.
I got that right.
So, I just really want to say ditto to Bradley Caffey. That's really what I want to say. No, I want to say first, thank you for your time and for being a board that is very open to listening. And I think that that's what makes Mint Hill so special, is that residents can stand up here before a commission and feel heard. And so I think that's one reason out of a million that I love Mint Hill. I want to say, first and foremost, that I'm here to discuss the land use plan and changing the current state where it lives residential there at Bartlett Road and Connell Road to be industrial. I completely agree with the land use plan, and thank you so much for everything. When it comes to entertainment nodes, that's my new word of the year too, nodes. Entertainment nodes, green space, everything that contributes to the betterment of this community and its residents. I purchased my home 9 years ago in Summerwood at 10226 Summerwood, or Leamington Drive, I forgot to put that part. Because I felt like it was a great place to be. Everyone I had ever met from Mint Hill, I would say, I don't know what they put in the water there, but they are absolutely amazing people. And I wanted to raise my son here for that reason. And I wasn't afraid to do it alone, because this is such a great place. I've invested there. I've worked hard to keep my home. I am also a business owner on 51 in the center of town, but I'm here, however, to ask the board to respectfully revise the current plan as shown and not allow for that to be an industrial corridor. As I've stated, I'm a homeowner and I'm incredibly vested in this community, not as just a homeowner, but also a business owner. Although it doesn't completely rezone it, it does show on the plan to be industrial, and that to me opens the door to a lot of industry in our town. And that for which I say no. As a small business owner and a resident, what makes Mint Hill great is that it's so charming. People love to come to Mint Hill. When they walk in my flower shop, they immediately say what a charming location this is. And it's so true. Changing that from residential to industrial 1.5 miles from our downtown corridor would be devastating to our community in Summerwood, but also to our town as Mint Hill. There's a lot of transient traffic, parking off the interstate, heavy saturation on 51, which I see daily with tractor trailers on that major highway going through our downtown corridor. Could you only imagine what industrial tracks would add to that? It's concerning. I ask that you keep the small town feel that we have all invested in. Those of you sitting there, those of us sitting here, we all took our hard-earned money to invest in our town. I ask that you keep that small town feel and ask for the revision of this to stay residential and not industrial. Light or heavy, we don't want industry here. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Collier. Look at you. You've done this before.
Well, good evening, Mayor Simmons and Commissioners. My name is Bill Collier, and I reside at 6730 Cinnamon Circle here in Mint Hill. Excuse me. At the Board of Commissioners meeting held November 12th in 2020, I was asked to serve on the Land Use Advisory Committee, and I agreed to volunteer along with many others from Mint Hill. This committee had 6 meetings beginning in February of 2021, and much time was spent on the goals and objectives. We participated in 3 public forums and received a multitude of comments and suggestions from residents attending, and this input was discussed, evaluated, and in many ways included in the 2022 plan. Plain and simple, I totally support the 2022 land use plan and wish to state that the plan was developed without political or developer input or pressure. I think what we get is the input that we received from the residents. And I would respectfully request that you unanimously adopt the 2022 land plan and begin the immediate implementation. And if I can be of service going forward, and I'll be glad to volunteer as needed to help bring this to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Normally, I'd close the hearing at this point in time, but there's enough of you here that I want to give a little bit of a lesson on rezoning for you that haven't been involved. I'm sorry, we've got one more that was sent in via email that we do read into the minutes as well. So, Town Manager Welch, if you'll read that at this time.
And I am going to apologize because I'm going to butcher this last name. Thomas Capo de Casa, 8321 Raventop Drive. The future land use plan to be voted on today reflects a possible future change of parcel ID 1390901, address of 10650 Blair Road, Mint Hill, North Carolina 28227, from residential to light industrial. This future land use plan should be rejected until this parcel is properly reflected to remain residential. The residents in the surrounding area object to a possible industrial facility in this location due to proximity to existing neighborhoods, present and future, noise and light pollution, and traffic. An industrial facility in this area does not meet the community preferences discussed at previous meetings. These preferences include sense of community and preference for, quote, things to do, end quote. Please reject the current version of the land use plan until this parcel is shown to remain residential.
Thank you. Okay. If you'll go back and look at minutes of our Board of Commissioners meeting, you'll find that I am the biggest proponent for people showing up at these meetings and speaking their piece. I say it every meeting when we have people in the room. I've run many meetings in this room where there were 3 or 4 people sitting out there. So I really appreciate the fact that you're here this evening. We follow a process in Mint Hill anytime we rezone a piece of property. First of all, the developer or the person that's asking for the rezoning has to file with the town. Now, what happened in this particular case is we had a developer, and it happens all the time, it's not just this case, who wants to catch the temperature of the neighborhood first before they come to us. We've had many of these in my years. Commissioner Long as well served as the chair on the planning board for decades, I'm going to say, but we've been through this before, and a lot of times that's what they're trying to do is check the temperature in the community on whether they're even going to file with us or not. So when you come here tonight speaking about a piece of property being rezoned, that's not happening until we go through our entire process. We have one project going on currently in Mint Hill that the neighbors were totally against the project when it was first brought to our attention. Before they brought it to the town, they met with the neighborhood. The neighborhood met with them. They talked through the plan. They nixed the plan. They trimmed the plan. They did all of these different things. The evening that they presented at their public hearing, the neighborhood came out in this force to approve the plan that they'd already disproved earlier on. So at this point in time, for you to fill our email boxes up is fine. And we listen, and I read every one of them. I've taken every phone call, you can tell I'm old, so I don't know how to block your number, so I have to pick it up and I pick it up and say hello still. I don't, some of you can get away without doing that, but I can't. So please, when you have the opportunity to meet with said person about said property, which we're not talking about said evening, do so and bring these concerns there first. If that project that you've discussed some amongst yourself evidently would ever come to the town, we have a process. We have a public hearing, okay? A lot of times we'll have a developer's workshop ahead of the public hearing. So there's a lot of times for you to comment, but I just ask that you take your comments to the right person at the right time, and you will be more successful in what you're trying to accomplish if you do that at this point in time. So with that being said, I'm going to close the public hearing on the 2022 land use plan. Item number 7. I'm now going to open the public hearing on ZC 22-4, filed by the Town of Mint Hill, presented by Rusty Rozelle of Mecklenburg County for a post-construction ordinance text amendment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Rusty Rozelle, and I manage the water quality program from Mecklenburg County, and we partner with the town of Mint Hill and a lot of different activities aimed at keeping the creeks in the town of Mint Hill clean. And one of the things that we do is work with town staff to administer what's called a post-construction ordinance. And this is the ordinance that requires developers to install stormwater control measures and have buffers along creeks so that we can filter out the stormwater pollutants and keep them out of our waterways. And what we're here tonight to ask you of is to approve a change to the existing post-construction ordinance. And almost all of the changes that we're asking you to approve are contained within subsection 305C number 9, and it's a table. It's called Stream Buffer Categories and Uses for Goose Creek. So I know Brian was around and Lee was around and John was around, but back in the day we had lots of discussions about the Carolina Hill Splitter and state law that restricts development in the Goose Creek watershed. And I know y'all were here too, yeah. Okay. And we ended up adopting an ordinance that mirrored state law, and we were required to comply or have our ordinance, Mint Hill's ordinance, the same as state law. And the state has delegated us authority to administer that law under the town of Mint Hill, which we do. And some time back, maybe a year ago, the state changed its table of uses. So this is a table that says what you can and cannot do in the buffer on Goose Creek. And buffer's 200 feet wide, measured from the top of the bank in the floodplain, and 100 feet wide on streams outside the floodplain. And in this table, there are three categories. One is, go ahead and do it, and you don't have to file anything. Second category is, well, maybe you can do it, but you don't have to mitigate for it, and it has to be approved by the town. And the third category is you just can't do it. Well, what they did in this new table is they've relaxed the restrictions a little bit, in a nutshell. For example, building bridges across the creek. They've created a category where if you don't disturb any more than 1/10 of an acre in the buffer, or if you're putting a driveway or a roadway across the creek, you don't disturb more than 1/10 of an acre in the buffer, then you just do it. You don't have to mitigate, you just do it. They've also relaxed somewhat the requirements on greenway trails, and they've relaxed somewhat the requirements on sewer line installation. So I guess, and I won't take any more of your time other than just to say that. It's better, it's not worse. And there you go. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
And worth adding, Mr. Mayor, Rusty is the preeminent stormwater person in the history of the world. I'll just go on record as saying that. But he's going to agree with me when I say this. You don't really have a choice.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's better.
Commissioner Henderson, any questions for Rusty?
No questions.
No questions.
Commissioner Holt?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Long?
Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
My understanding is this is a public hearing, and we will not vote on this till when, next month? Is that?
Likely.
Right, yes.
Next month? All right, did anybody sign up to speak to this? I don't have any cards on this one. With that being said, I will now close the public hearing on ZC 22-4 after I thank Rusty for coming all the way out here.
Thank you
to
for
lovely Mint Hill. It's a lot nicer than Mecklenburg County out here, isn't it? Huh? You can say yes.
Yes.
We won't put it in a minute.
I'm old, I don't hear good.
We won't put it in a minute.
No, it's a pleasure to be here,
Thank
yeah.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Item number 8 is our standard public comments, and I don't think we have anybody signed up for that. All right, with that, and item number 9, discussion and decision on ZC 22-3 filed by Chris Hertz for tax parcel 137-152-01 to request site plan and architectural approval, including building materials for property located at 10815 Clear Creek Commerce Drive. Mr. Horde.
Thank you, sir. Planning Board met in July, and they offered an unfavorable recommendation, and it was a 3-2 vote, but it was an unfavorable recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here tonight. They have also presented some photographs and some information, I think, that was requested at the last public hearing. If you have any questions about that, I can pull that up if you would like, and also the applicant is here to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Would you pull up the slides that you're speaking about, John?
Yes.
I need more paperwork.
Is there a particular one, sir?
Well, yes, sir, go a little bit deeper into it, please.
Hold on.
Okay, right there, let's stop right there a minute. So you're showing two examples of masonry, either 4 feet tall or the top one, about how tall is that? I think it's maybe a bit higher up.
The bottom photograph?
Or the,
One, they both got masonry.
yes, sir. The one on the Costco, that's probably a bit taller, isn't it?
It does appear to be.
Just looking at those red balusters in front of the natural gas, that looks to be a much taller masonry. Those are examples for us to consider, or can we?
Okay, so these photographs were presented by the applicant. So
Correct,
they
I
sent-
understand.
They sent this, but I think this was information that was requested at the public hearing. I think there was, I think you wanted to see some specs and maybe some examples, and I think this is what they've sent to respond to that.
We're looking for alternatives to what we typically ask for in this business park. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct, yeah. So just to remind everyone, there's a set of approved materials for Clear Creek, and they're asking to include another material.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Why did that come back to us, just for my, I mean, we already dealt with this one time with Clear Creek. Why did Clear Creek just kind of blew it off and send it back to us? They didn't want to deal with it, or?
You're saying a few years ago in Clear Creek?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Clear Creek did come to you guys, it was in 2019.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
just to back up, the original condition was applied at the earliest rezoning. So I think back in late 90s or 2000, there was a requirement that the front facade, side sides exposed to the street must be brickstone.
Right.
In 2019, Clear Creek, the developer, Albemarle Road Associates, they came forward and presented additional materials. And it was actually in response to a building at the time that was planned, what became the Mozak building.
Mosaic building, yes.
So if you recall, they added materials such as tilt wall, I can't remember off the top of my head, glass, there was some other materials that they added. So now we have that as our approved list of materials, and tonight the applicant is asking to include this one additional material.
But it's not the business park, the business park is not part of this application, the way I
No,
understand.
no, no. This would, the way this is set up, this would only apply to this one site. This would not apply to the park. That would require Clear Creek to come forward and
My point.
do more of a mass rezone, yeah.
That's my point.
And
Okay.
I think that the way that this process is going like this, it opens up a can of worms for us in the future. And that's why it's hard for me to get behind it. And especially after being at the planning board meeting as well and listening to what was going on there as well as the first meeting. It's basically the same scenario. You can't give one kid a candy bar and not give it to all of them. So,
Do you have, does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Well, I guess my only question is the reason that the planning board gave it an unfavorable recommendation because of the aesthetics of it, or, because I'm unclear as to why they gave an unfavorable recommendation.
So it was a long discussion, but I think it was more in line with what Commissioner Holton just said, which was it was more about setting a precedent. Some of them, even the ones that voted against it, they even made comments about the material was probably a good material. I don't think anyone were familiar with the material, but I think as far as aesthetics go, I think they were fine with it. I think it was more in line with, we have a set of materials that are approved for this park, let it be. I mean, that was really the bottom line.
Any further questions?
I just got a comment. I was against it from the very beginning. It's a very thin material. I think over a period of time, it's going to be punctured, it's going to look bad. Then you've got who's going to fix it? It's a lease building. Everybody in that development has had to follow the same rules from the beginning. And we start making allowances, and we're opening, as Patrick said, we're opening up a can of worms for the rest of the development. So I'm very much against it.
If we don't have any further questions, I will entertain a motion.
got a motion to deny the application on ZC 22-3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I hear any further discussion? All in favor of denying the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 10, authorize town manager to execute contract, pre-construction and design service agreement with Edifice LLC for Lebanon Road Public Service Facility.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So following up on the design workshop we had just a couple of weeks ago, this is essentially the formalization of your desire to proceed through design. The price will not exceed the contract price of $826,100, and Kevin will expand a little bit on kind of the next steps. But what you will be paying for here will be a set of construction documents that we can then put out to bid to find out what the construction price will be, which, Kevin, you take it from there.
Very good. So this is ultimately going to be a two-step process for you folks, okay? As Brian said, this is the first contract with Edifice to handle the design and pre-construction work. And devil in the details, what's going to be attached to that contract is a form template of your second contract, which will be after it's designed and then it's bid out, and you all know exactly what the construction price will be. There will be a contract amendment to come in and say, okay, step 2 is this construction agreement. So again, tonight you are approving step 1, the design and the pre-construction work that goes into getting a good design, including getting it bid out and getting to the point of a definitive price. Round 2 will come at a later date.
Question, Commissioner Long?
No, sir.
Commissioner Holton?
None.
None.
One, I can't let you by with no question.
Please.
I'll make a motion
I've got
to
a con,
authorize.
I've got, no, I'm not done. I can still talk. The contract price is listed at $826,100.
Correct.
Does that mean it will not exceed that cost?
It will actually be lower than that. And I can tell you that because I may still be negotiating with them, and it will be under that. I
So
can tell
what
you
we
that now.
passed tonight, can we make it that you execute the contract not to exceed that amount?
I have zero qualms with you doing that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
Good. No further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to authorize the town manager to execute the contract, a pre-construction and design service agreement with Edifice LLC for Lebanon Road Public Service Facility.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 11, other business and council matters. And we'll start with Commissioner Henderson.
Just a couple of things. I attended the Mint Hill Police Department monthly crime review meeting. As it relates to crime stats, year-to-date violent crimes offenses are down. That's a good thing, 73% from last year, and that's actually significantly lower compared to neighboring municipalities. Property offenses and motor vehicle thefts are down as well. And just overall, our police force is working diligently to serve and protect the residents of Mint Hill. Also, I attended the Board of Adjustments meeting last month. There were 3 variance requests, 2 were denied, and 1 was approved. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Dalton.
I'd like to speak on Music and Brews this Saturday, if it doesn't get rained out, according to the weather. On Sunday, the fire department will have a 911 ceremony. If you could come out there and be a part of that, we all remember that date very well. And then on Wednesday, the 14th, the Chamber of Commerce is having their annual golf tournament. That is their one larger fundraiser event. If you could make it out to that, they would really appreciate it. Or make a donation to it if you don't play golf. That's all.
Commissioner Holton.
I'll echo what you said earlier about being nice to see a full house in here and the participation with the public, and I'm even more grateful to see the ones that stuck it out all the way to the end.
Commissioner Long.
Last week, I attended a meeting of the Quad, which is Matthews, Mint Hill, Indian Trail, and Stallings. And we had a presentation from Sean with District 10, NCDOT, addressing some of the things that were brought up earlier tonight about future Highway 51, and it's not favorable. It's been pushed out much further than we thought. So thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for handling the meeting so well tonight, Mayor. I thought it was done extremely well.
Staff, anything I missed staff-wise?
No, sir.
Chief? Great job. We're gonna stand up and pound your chest after that report I got today at the same meeting? Our police department just does a super job. I say this all the time, but Commissioner Henderson and I sat there today, and I'm gonna tell on myself again. I always get in trouble for telling on myself. My wife always says, I can't believe you said that, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We went through the process, and the one thing that we get to see is not only what our police department's doing, but the other municipalities around us. And they share information together, and they work together well, so we're not ever taking pot shots at our friends in Matthews or our friends in Pineville, although next Wednesday I'm having lunch with those two mayors, and I will let them know that our numbers are better than theirs. But our numbers in this community are just wonderful out of our police department. And the fact that we're still understaffed in that department, please help us, help you, and anybody that you have that might have an interest in law enforcement, please have them talk to our police department. Same thing with our fire department. The numbers that our fire department brings through are nobody around here compares, but they're always looking for people as well. And one other group that never gets mentioned unless I do it at the end of the meeting is our Public Works Department. We take a lot of things for granted in this town when our streets look good and our sidewalks are good and the medians are cleaned up and the mowing takes place. And Steve Fry, who takes care of that group, has a slide, and I forget just exactly how many things is required to take care of a specific road. Do you have a number with all the raking the leaves and everything else? I mean, it's to take care of the street in front of your property. We touch dozens of times. So if you ever see those guys out and about, he doesn't let them have lunch breaks evidently because I can't ever buy them lunch anywhere. But if you ever see them out and about, make sure that you tell them thank you. And same thing with our staff here. I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. I want you to talk to your neighbors, especially you that stayed a little while in Summerwood. It's a great community. There's a lot of good people that live out there, and cats, some that aren't. But I'm kidding. But we need to get involved with the town of Mint Hill other than when it affects our 1 mile square area. You should know what's going on in Hood's Crossroads. You should know what's going on with our sidewalk project over on Central Drive. Some of these people can't tell you where Central Drive even is, but we just added sidewalk there to tie into others. And that's because our town staff does a bang-up job at what they're doing. So with all that, I'll entertain a motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
So moved, sir.
So we are now adjourned.